"Release my dad, and I'll make you walk," the little girl said firmly to the wheelchair-bound judge. The entire courtroom erupted in laughter, but when she placed her hands on his legs, something happened that froze everyone's mockery forever. The Superior Court of Justice had never been so packed on a Tuesday morning. Every seat was occupied, people stood pressed against the walls, and the air conditioning struggled to combat the heat generated by hundreds of bodies crammed into a space designed for half that number. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, whispers creating a low hum that made the wooden panels vibrate. Judge Malcolm Thornton wheeled himself slowly through the side entrance, his wheelchair making a soft squeaking sound that somehow cut through the murmuring crowd. He was a man in his early 60s, known throughout the city not for his judicial wisdom but for his iron-fisted rulings and complete intolerance for what he called emotional manipulation in his courtroom. The accident that had confined him to a wheelchair years ago had only hardened his already stern demeanor. "All rise," the bailiff announced, though Judge Thornton gestured impatiently for everyone to sit. "Case number 2847B, the State versus Michael Hayes. Charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud a charitable organization." The heavy doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and Michael Hayes entered flanked by 2 guards. He walked with his head down, the prison uniform marking him as guilty in the eyes of many present before a single word of testimony had been heard. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't Michael himself. It was the small figure that suddenly broke through the gallery barrier. "Daddy!" The voice was high-pitched, desperate, filled with a love so pure that even the most cynical observers felt something stir in their chests. Emma Hayes was 8 years old, though her small frame made her appear younger. She had rushed past the bailiff with a speed that surprised everyone, her arms outstretched toward her father. The guards instinctively moved to block her, but Michael's face, which had been a mask of defeated resignation, suddenly crumbled with emotion. "Emma, sweetheart, you shouldn't be here." Michael's voice broke as he spoke, tears streaming down his face. "Please, baby, go back to Aunt Rachel." Order in my courtroom!" Judge Thornton's voice boomed with authority as he slammed his gavel. "Someone remove that child immediately." But Emma had already reached her father, wrapping her small arms around his waist with such fierce determination that the guards hesitated. In that moment, everyone in the courtroom saw not a criminal and a child, but a father and daughter whose bond transcended the bars of accusation and judgment. "Sir, I'll handle this," a woman's voice called from the gallery. Rachel Foster, Michael's sister, rushed forward with an apologetic expression. She was a nurse who had taken time off work to support her brother, already drowning in legal fees she couldn't afford. "Emma, honey, remember what we talked about? We have to let Daddy speak to the judge." "But Aunt Rachel, they're saying Daddy did bad things." Emma's voice was loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. "He didn't. He would never steal from sick children. Tell them, Daddy." The mention of sick children sent a ripple through the crowd. The case had made headlines for weeks. Michael Hayes, former financial director of the Children's Hope Foundation, accused of embezzling over $2 million meant for pediatric cancer treatments. The evidence seemed damning. Bank transfers, falsified documents, luxury purchases that didn't match his modest salary. "That's enough!" Judge Thornton's patience had evaporated. "Bailiff Morrison, remove the child now or I'll hold everyone in contempt." "No, please," Michael pleaded, his voice hoarse. "She's just scared. Give me 1 minute to calm her down." "You don't get to make demands in my courtroom, Mr. Hayes," the judge responded coldly. "You're accused of stealing from dying children. The very presence of your daughter here is a manipulation tactic that I will not tolerate." The prosecutor, a sharp-featured man named Gerald Hutchinson, stood with barely concealed satisfaction. "Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of emotional theater we expected from the defense. Mr. Hayes has shown no remorse, no accountability, and now he's using his own child as a prop." Emma's head snapped toward the prosecutor with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone her age. "My daddy isn't a prop, and he didn't steal anything. You're all lying!" The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Some people were moved by the child's devotion, others scandalized by what they saw as a calculated performance. Judge Thornton's face darkened with anger. "Young lady, you are this close to being removed by force. I suggest you let your aunt take you out of here before I have security do it." But Emma didn't move. Instead, she turned to face the judge directly, and something in her eyes made several people in the front row lean forward. There was a certainty there, a knowing that seemed far beyond her years. "Judge, sir," Emma's voice had changed, becoming calmer but somehow more commanding. "Will you let me say something before they take me away? Please, just 1 minute." Judge Thornton studied the child with a mixture of irritation and curiosity. In his decades on the bench, he had seen every manipulation, every trick, every attempt to sway judgment with emotion. But there was something about this little girl that gave him pause. "1 minute," he said curtly, "but make it quick." Emma took a deep breath, her small hands gripping her father's prison uniform. "My daddy worked at the Children's Hospital Foundation because my little brother Nathan had cancer. He died 2 years ago when he was only 5. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. This detail hadn't been in any of the media coverage. Rachel Foster wiped tears from her eyes, nodding to confirm the truth of Emma's words. "Daddy saw how much money families needed for treatment," Emma continued, her voice steady despite the tears running down her cheeks. "He saw kids die because they couldn't afford medicine. He promised Nathan before he died that he would help other children. That's why he worked there. Not to steal, to help." "That's very touching," Prosecutor Hutchinson interrupted, his voice dripping with skepticism. "But good intentions don't explain $2 million missing from the Foundation's accounts, do they?" Emma turned to look at the prosecutor with such direct clarity that the man actually took a step back. "My daddy didn't take that money. Mr. Roland Ashford did." The name hit the courtroom like a thunderbolt. Roland Ashford was the CEO and founder of the Children's Hope Foundation, a beloved public figure who had been praised by governors, senators, and celebrities for his humanitarian work. He was the star witness against Michael Hayes. "This is outrageous," Prosecutor Hutchinson exploded. "Your Honor, this child is making baseless accusations against the prosecution's primary witness." But Judge Thornton held up his hand. Something about the way Emma had spoken the name, with such absolute certainty, had triggered his judicial instincts. "How do you know this, young lady?" "Because I heard them talking," Emma replied. "Mr. Ashford came to our house late one night, weeks before they arrested Daddy. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard them arguing in the kitchen." Michael's face had gone pale. "Emma, baby, you don't have to—" "Mr. Hayes, be quiet," Judge Thornton commanded, his eyes never leaving Emma. "What did you hear, child?" Emma's voice became stronger, clearer, as if she had been waiting months to tell this story. "Mr. Ashford told Daddy that he needed to sign some papers or bad things would happen to our family. He said Daddy was going to take the blame for the missing money. When Daddy said no, Mr. Ashford got really mean. He said nobody would believe Daddy because he was just an accountant, but everyone loved Mr. Ashford because he was famous." The courtroom had become so quiet that the humming of the fluorescent lights was audible. Rachel Foster stood frozen, apparently hearing this story for the first time. The prosecutor looked like he wanted to object, but seemed temporarily paralyzed. "Mr. Ashford said he had changed all the computer records to make it look like Daddy took the money," Emma continued, her small voice filling the enormous courtroom. "He said he needed the money for his gambling debts, but if anyone found out, the foundation would close and no more children would get help. So Daddy had to be the bad guy. This is completely inadmissible hearsay from a child." Prosecutor Hutchinson finally found his voice. "Your Honor, you can't possibly—" "I can and will hear whatever I want in my courtroom," Judge Thornton snapped. His analytical mind was already working through the implications. "Mr. Hutchinson, where is Mr. Ashford today?" "He's not scheduled to testify until tomorrow, Your Honor. He's an extremely busy man. Get him here. Now." The judge's tone left no room for argument. "And I want his financial records subpoenaed immediately. Everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, property holdings, all of it. Your Honor, you can't seriously be derailing this entire case based on a child's fairy tale." The prosecutor's professional composure was cracking. "Watch me," Judge Thornton responded coldly. Then he turned back to Emma, and his expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Young lady, do you understand how serious these accusations are?" "Yes, sir," Emma nodded. "But I also understand that my daddy is good, and Mr. Ashford is bad, even if everyone thinks it's the other way around." Judge Thornton leaned back in his wheelchair, his fingers steepled as he processed this unprecedented situation. In his long career, he had prided himself on seeing through deception, on being immune to emotional manipulation. But there was something about this child's testimony that rang with truth. "Bailiff Morrison, I want Mr." Hayes returned to holding but kept comfortable. "Miss Foster, you and Emma will remain in the courthouse under supervision. And Mr. Hutchinson, you have exactly 6 hours to produce Roland Ashford in my courtroom, or I'm dismissing this case with prejudice." The courtroom exploded into chaos. Reporters rushed for the exits to file breaking news. Spectators argued about what they had just witnessed. The prosecutor looked like he had been struck by lightning, but Emma simply looked up at her father with eyes that held hope for the first time in months. "I told you I'd make them listen, Daddy." Michael Hayes pulled his daughter into a fierce embrace, his shoulders shaking with sobs. "I love you so much, baby girl. So much." As the guards gently separated them, Emma called out one more thing, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Judge Thornton, sir, when they prove Daddy is innocent, I'm going to help you too." The judge paused in wheeling himself toward his chambers. "Help me how, child?" Emma's response was delivered with such pure confidence that it sent chills through everyone who heard it. "I'm going to make you walk again. I promise." The laughter that erupted was immediate and cruel. Several spectators openly mocked the child's naive promise. Even some of the court staff smiled at what they assumed was childish fantasy. But Judge Malcolm Thornton didn't laugh. He stared at the small girl who had just turned his courtroom upside down, and for the first time in years, he felt something he had long ago abandoned, a tiny spark of curiosity about what was possible. "We'll see," he said quietly, before disappearing into his chambers. Nobody in that courtroom could have imagined that within days, Emma Hayes would prove every single one of her promises true, and in the process, expose a conspiracy that reached far beyond one man's stolen millions. The real story was just beginning. The next 6 hours transformed the courthouse into a war zone of legal maneuvering and frantic investigation. Judge Thornton's chambers had become command central, with financial investigators, forensic accountants, and FBI agents streaming in and out with stunning regularity. The judge had made it clear, if there was even a shred of truth to Emma Hayes' accusations, he wanted every stone turned, every document examined, every lead followed. Rachel Foster sat in a private witness room with Emma, both exhausted but unable to rest. The little girl had finally stopped crying, but her small body still trembled periodically with the aftershocks of emotional release. She had been carrying this secret for months, terrified that speaking up would put her father in even more danger. "Emma, honey," Rachel said softly, stroking her niece's hair, "why didn't you tell me about what you heard that night?" Emma looked up with eyes that held far